The next topic is nothing for a coma. It's about accessible and inclusive UX for us all. The next speaker of the session demands stop designing for yourself. He will explain how to create accessible and inclusive UX for all. Please welcome, with a warm round of applause, the CEO and strategic designer at NO Studio, Guillaume Vaslin.
Hello, everyone. Is that okay? So it's funny because I spend my life having big conferences, really important meetings, or like classes just after lunch, and I was like dead. And for the first time in my life, I am on the other side, so I start. It's a bit of karma, right? But I mean, I hope I will try to keep you a bit entertained, so you won't fall asleep. Today, we will discuss on how to design inclusive products. And over the next half an hour, hopefully you will know a bit how a man's perspective can have a long and deep impact on your life, how we are still living in a non-inclusive world, especially a digital world as of today. Then I will give you some hints on how to tackle these design biases. And last but not least, I will tell you a bit what are the pitfalls of AI in design. But before we get started, a really short introduction. So my name is Guillaume. I think you will notice pretty quickly I was born and raised in France. I am a designer at NO Studio. We are specialized in UX, UI design. Those who are not in the field, it's just like creating a visual bridge between the machine and a human. Like everything you see on screen, that's what we do. But before becoming a designer, I tried to become an architect, and I failed after a few months. But before leaving this architecture school in Paris, I got to know an architect called, I mean, not personally, but I learned through conferences about Le Corbusier, who is like a Swiss architect. Then later on got the French nationality, and he became big in 20s, 30s, 1920s, 1950s, and he's quite well known for brutalism, you know, like working with concrete and like functionalism. So not the happiest design ever, but he had a really big impact in the architecture world. And this guy actually had changed many lives without even noticing it. So he came up with quite a genius idea. He decided to get rid of the metric system, so with centimeters, meters, or the British imperial system with inches and feet, and said, you know what, I'm going to create a system using human features. So like starting to measure the distance between the top of your fingers until your shoulder, or when you sit, you know, between your bottom and the floor. And he said, like, you know what, it's going to be user-centered, and my whole system called modular is going to be based on real human features, right? So that's a really smart idea. That's one of the first truly user experience design process that we may know. And they actually had a big impact in a way we design furniture, you know, like how high should be this chair, or how high should be this, well, I don't know what it is, but like this table here. That was all decided based on the modular. And it became like a worldwide success. In 1956, the whole building headquarters for the United Nations in New York was entirely built around this modular system. And to do so, so Le Corbusier was a bit a fan of Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes. He based his whole system on a British policeman, like a Bobby, with a 1.83 centimeter height, so quite a tall man. I think you can already start to understand what the issue behind basing all your system around one single person, right? Because the problem is that back in the days, I mean, the 30s and the 40s were not necessarily the most inclusive period of our history in terms of gender equality, in terms of everything, basically everything. And unfortunately, who was using most the kitchen appliances, who was staying the most at home, were children and women. Don't judge me, that was the century, right? So all the appliances, all the kitchens, all the furnitures were actually not designed for the end target group. Now you tell me like, okay, well, that's fair and square, but that's the beginning of this century, was a shit show anyway. Nowadays, we are all in tech, we're super progressive, we're disrupting the world. So how does it relate to us? Well, I have some bad news. The digital world is actually absolutely not inclusive, and I'm going to give you a few examples. I had the luck to work on a big e-commerce platform and start to read a bit how to make this platform compatible for people with visual impairments. So either colorblind or some eyesight issues and disabilities. And I started to run some tests with some screen readers, and I ended up on this big Chinese platform that I'm not going to name. But when I used the screen reader, that's what I got. You are currently in the web area. Link, wish list, product.html, header 1 categories, image, link, button header 2, live, link. So basically, you can't orientate yourself if you have a visual disability and you have to rely on screen reader. Another example, a big bank I'm not going to name either, from Germany. When you want to open a bank account, the really first question that you are asked is if you are a male or a female. So obviously, I know that there's some compliance issue behind, but just try to put yourself in a skin of a young teenager who is already facing some insecurity, who is identified as non-binary. When you land on this really first question, you already can identify yourself with the onboarding process. So quite fun. On my LinkedIn profile, I got, home feed, I got this post from an employee working at Apple, and she said that 98% of the stock pictures with sign language are utterly bullshit. They are just like random signs that while a female just do in front of the camera. So not just imagine how it is to be someone suffering from this disability. You go on the website of the company that claims to be inclusive, and you see like, these random happy women mimicking your sign language. That's pretty much offending. And that's just a few examples, because I can tell you we've seen so many of them. And my core message here is that the same mistakes that we did in an analog world beginning of the century tend to replicate in our online world. And unfortunately, it's quite human. Because as a person, as a creator, when you conceive something, you tend to do it based on your surrounding. You try to create products for people that look like you, that come from a similar background as you. So this is a really human feature to replicate, your situation. But by doing so automatically, you will exclude people with other abilities, of a background, of a sexuality, because you don't have necessarily them in your scope of sight. And the scary thing is that, I don't want to be too political here, but there is pretty much an homogeneous group of people that decide on our tech future. So if you connect that to what I just said, if we tend to create products for people that are similar background, automatically we will actually exclude people. And I took a few figures from Google, and Google is actually a super progressive company. I didn't take Amazon, I didn't take Alibaba, I didn't take Uber. I took Google. They are like super, super good. And still in this company, like 70% of the employees are actually male. So it's normal that we have certain biases that come from our human nature. And that leads to a certain phenomenon, what I call the edge case. I don't know if you've been involved into product development, but when something is a little bit different to the standard you're actually developing, you're like, yeah, you know what, put it in a backlog, that's just an edge case, we will deal with that later, I mean, I heard that, and I said that quite a bit in the past. And that's the edge case idea, is that when something is different from the main traditional user, you automatically say, well, that's niche or that's edgy. Let's deal with that later. And the question is now, I mean, you're probably asking, like, why should we care about that? Well, first of all, my mom say, be nice to people. You have to be considerate. You have to, not think only about yourself. But I know we live in a capitalist world, and that's not enough. So I will give you some ideas and reasons why you should actually consider creating and designing inclusive products. First of all, an edge case is not something permanent. it can happen. It can happen at any time. You know, like the mother, a friend of mine, actually suffered from quite a serious sickness, and every time she stood up on a scale, she got congratulated by the smart scale, saying, like, "Hey, good job, you lost 0.5 pounds." The issue is she was trying to regain some. So she was actually in a situation where the product design were not really fitting her situation. Or let's say, I don't know, like something more trivial. You are in a place when you can't watch a video with a sound. You are like at the university, you are at a funeral. You can't you can look at TikTok videos with a sound, right? So you can't rely on your, how do you call it? On your ears and your auditive skills, exactly. So in that way, you also have a certain situational impairment, so to say. So just I would like to point out that any one of us can be in a situation where we appear to be in an edge case. Yesterday evening, I had the luck, I got one of the participants from the conference pointed me a really cool game called God of War. I'm not a gamer, but I went into it, and actually the whole game was designed following the latest accessibility standards. So you could change so many things to actually play the game, even if you only could rely only on one arm, or only like, you have limited control of your body. If you have eyesight problems, they put so much in place. And actually, thanks to this accessibility standard, they managed to tap into all the markets that no one yet really took seriously. So for a company, there is actually an economical drive behind designing digital products, accessible products. And also, we realized that by designing from another user perspective, you trigger innovation and creativity within your team, because you look at your product from another, perspective. So you come up with new solution, you come up with different way of thinking. So it actually also have a positive impact in your team itself. And last but not least, something that I experiment firsthand a few years ago, the people that can't access a product or I feel excluded, they will hate against you. They will write bad reviews. They will complain, rightfully so. So it will also have an impact on your KPIs and reviews. Okay, so now how do we do to change a bit the status quo? That's super dangerous. Well, I will give you some ideas. First of all, I will start with the conclusion. What does it mean, inclusive design? Because some people speak about social design, ethical design, accessible design. So, I mean, in my eyes, inclusive design is about not excluding people. So trying to develop products or services that as many people as possible can access, use at any time of the day. That's a really primitive definition, but the one I use when we start to develop accessible products. And the first recommendation, and I think it's the main ethos of design thinking, is actually to involve as many users as possible. So if you are familiar with the design thinking mindset, the really first step is empathize. Build empathy and understanding. Try to understand who are your customers, who are your users, and what I would also recommend here is try to extend a little bit your panel of users. When you do customer research, it would be interesting to look at older profiles, maybe having certain restriction, other kind of abilities or different backgrounds. You know, I think it would be really rich when you test product or when you drive interviews in order to gather more insights. And when you do usability testing, so if you release a product, I won't advise you to do that all the time, but at least at the beginning and at the end of your product release, try to let your product tested by other kind of users with specific condition, impairments, or backgrounds. And there are a lot of associations out there. So we work with a Blind and Deaf Association from Berlin, and they're super eager actually to challenge the status quo and provide with testers to try your softwares. The second thing is, like, luckily there's a lot of tools out there. I think you may have heard of Google Lighthouse. It's actually accessible for anyone who uses Chrome. You can actually do a lot with what's available out there. So you have like screen readers, simulators, such as Windows, NVDA, Apple VoiceOver, and so on. You have contrast checker. If you use Figma, there's like a plugin called Ally that helps you to understand a little bit what are the right contrast. There's a lot of tools out there to start doing some proper check. Third one, the thing that nobody does, is read the guidelines. I would invite you just, first of all, really quickly on Wikipedia, try to understand what is the WCAG. You know, what are the main purpose behind the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. What does it mean to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust? So that gives you a bit, you know, the basis to develop accessible product. And also get familiar with AAA, the A to AAA, which is actually the standards behind WCAG, just to understand what's going on. And as a developer, you probably don't deal with that, but I will invite anyone working in a software field to browse really quickly on these guidelines that Google, Android, Windows wrote and Apple wrote in order to create accessible and inclusive product. So I don't ask you to really understand what's behind, but roughly, what is an accessible design? Okay, so you have to have an ARA tag so that a screen reader will identify that a button is a button. Okay, try to understand what's the dynamic, what's the idea behind. You know, I mean, obviously, if you're not a developer, you don't have to cope with that. But that's something really important to have in mind when you're involved in product development. And that's actually my last advice, is just to get started, because obviously, to make a 100% inclusive product from overnight is just not possible. It's just like, I mean, it's going to be super expensive, you take a lot of time, but you have to get started. You know, like every sprint you have, every step of development you have, just think, okay, did we check the contrast? Are we trying to be all as inclusive as possible towards communities? All these kind of things, you know, always challenge the status quo, get involved, and don't expect, you know, the C-level, the management to do that. You know, it has to be everyone's task to keep that in mind and try to actually initiate this kind of discussion. So, let's talk about the future. AI. I'm super excited about AI, I have to say, because as a designer, I see a lot of potential. I mean, I will give you an example. I use Facebook only to binge videos right now. So I look at I have cooking videos of chefs preparing omelets and this kind of thing. And Facebook understood that. So first of all, it only shows me cooking videos, but on top, you know, the interface changed, and the main button for me is now the video shortcuts, because they understood that when I go on Facebook, I just binge videos. So that's a bit, you know, where I think machine learning will help and support us as designers. They will learn from our behaviors, and then they will adapt user experience based on our needs. So I may have big hopes for AI in that direction, but also in the direction of user research and user testing. I will tell you how we do in the agency right now. You basically have a person trying your software, then you have another person from our team asking some question, and then you have here on the other hand an intern taking notes and actually registering. It's not an intern, obviously, but some trying, like, recording everything. We record the whole session, and then when we are done, we crunch everything on we do Excel sheets, or we do like a document and so on. So it's quite a lengthy and I mean, I wouldn't say annoying, but it takes some time to do like proper user testing, right? And I know there's a lot of solutions out there that actually have solution that actually came up with good ways to solve this struggle. But I think AI will really help you also to analyze biometric data. You know, if a user say, "Hey, it's super easy," but he's sweating, you know, and like you see he's like panicking, the AI could pick that up, you know, and say like, yeah, he's lying, or like you're just trying to understand why he has difficulty, why he's challenging or not, and also, you know, like clustering all the information, you know, like doing drawing conclusion from all your results could be done also thanks to machine learning and AI. So I believe, you know, there's a huge potential, and yet, like in every new technology, we are just at the beginning, and there are some limits. And I'm going to give you beautiful examples. I mean, beautiful and sad at the same time. I don't know if you remember, but like back in the days of Twitter and Facebook, when you had a really long picture in your feed, the platform will automatically crop it, and they will usually crop the beginning of your picture. So if someone just uploading a really long portrait, you know, so it doesn't mess up the whole feed, Facebook or Twitter will automatically crop, you know, the the top part of your pictures. Well, Twitter, genius as usual, decided to use AI to identify what's the most important parts of the picture and crop around this part. And what happened is that Twitter decided, the algorithm behind Twitter, automatically cropped the pictures around white male. Even though you had Barack Obama, who is like twice the freaking president of the US, right? And Twitter decided, nah, you know what? The most important person is this guy, Mitch McConnell. Or another quite interesting bias is from Amazon. Amazon decided to automatize a little bit the recruiting mechanism. So they use software to analyze all the CVs and actually make recommendation. And 100% of the CVs that went out were male CVs. And there were actually as many women and male. And my favorite last example actually came, I think 3 weeks ago, is when a user asked Alexa, how do you stop kids from laughing? And he got, you could punch them in the throat. If they are writhing in pain and unable to breathe, they will be less likely to laugh. And, which is true. But I mean, the reason behind AI coming with these like interesting answers is because AI rely on available data. You know, like machine learning wouldn't be any smarter if they don't have available data out there. And how it works is like when we feed the machine with a copy of our world, the algorithm will automatically actually take over this disparity, this inequality, this discrimination, because at the beginning of the food chain, the human would have put this biased data. And what happened is that if we feed the machine excluding certain users from the need, well, we'll have the same problem. So I think it's our job as human beings to clean and analyze the quality of the data that are fed to the algorithm in order to make sure that at the end no further bias will be replicated. And I also would like you here to point out that when a new software appears, so I don't know if you're familiar with Open DALL-E from also from Elon Musk. It's basically using it's like generating content, picture content through AI. And one of the first tests I did was actually to say like tech CEO and to see which kind of results would be generated by the AI. And I was super positively surprised that the CEOs that was displayed by the Open DALL-E were actually coming from mixed backgrounds, from different. So actually, they already make sure that the data fed into the algorithm was as mixed as possible, as inclusive as possible. So you will tell me like, okay, but it's not our job. That's Elon Musk or like the C-level job to pick up inclusive data. Fair enough, I'm with you. But at the end of the day, we will be the one feeding content. We choose the tools. We are actually in charge of what the algorithm will control. So I do think it's also a bit our responsibility to check how the tools are behaving, and if we can, to feed the machine with data as inclusive as possible. And I have like about 1 minute left, so I will wrap up pretty quickly. The main lesson today is like not to design for your users, but with them. Try to include as many edge cases as possible because you can yourself become a edge case one day. Educate yourself because unfortunately it's not going to be the C-level or the big deciders of our world that will put back inclusiveness on the agenda. It has to come from us. The discussion has to be raised every time we participate to product development, and that way we can actually stop the spread of cultural biases. And I will finish on one line. Diversity is actually super easy. The hard part is inclusion. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. I'm very impressed by your presentation. Thank you very much. The one sentence I take away for sure is don't wait for the C-level, I mean, this is really something, if this is an important topic to you, just do it and don't wait till somebody order it to you and say, this is what we have to do. Now is the time for your questions. We have about 4 minutes left, so please hands up for the questions. I will come with a microphone. And the question is right before me. What is your name and your title and your question, please?
Hi, I'm Jule. I'm a master's student in human-computer interaction, and my question is, when you think of the future of accessibility, do you think there should be like a kind of one-size-fits-all approach so that every website or application is always accessible to everyone, or more of a custom way of designing maybe websites based on individual preference and need?
That's a really good question. Is my microphone still on?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, the thing is that right now, designing inclusive products is not part of the process like designing responsive products. You know, then for now it's automatic to think product for a smartphone, for the desktop, for everything. So I think the first step is try to include it, you know, in the natural product development. You know, to have like one person, an Airbnb in US, for instance, they have an inclusive design team, and they do nothing but that. You know, they really and to your question, like if it has to be individual to every person's impairment, condition, or situation. I think you have like different levels of prioritization, you know, because at the end all the resources are limited, but there are some things that you can already tackle from day one, you know, like the contrast, the screen reader, because it's often, you know, easier to sing it from the beginning than try to solve the problem later on. So that's why my answer will be like try to have a dedicated process when you start to deal with that, the same way you deal with a responsive website nowadays, or like different platform when you develop an app, you know, you don't only do like, oh, we do only Android. You think about all the kind of platforms. So it has to be part of the discussion the same way, and then you have to prioritize based on your user profile.
And of course, there are already some proven methods and tactics you can actually use without inventing the wheel again, like something which is screen readable or so.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't have to develop that by yourself. Maybe you can find something which works even better, but then please share it with the community, I'd say. Something like that. Okay, next question.
Well, feel free to shoot me an email if you have a...
No question at all?
Any other question?
Doesn't matter. You can still grab him. You will be here all day, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He will be here all day. If you don't, you don't. You can also find him on LinkedIn, I believe. And of course, when you use the app, you can contact him via the app. I would say thank you very much, Guillaume,
Thank you.
CEO and strategic designer at NO Studio. Thank you very much.